Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I am continuing my series about everything wrong with this absolutely horrible, terrible, garbage bottom of the barrel book, Almost Lost, by the late fraud and shameless con artist and Mormon propagandist Beatrice Sparks. I'm totally gobsmacked at anyone in this day and age, particularly after Rick Emerson's awesome 2022 book Unmasked Alice was published and made quite a stir, that anyone would actually still defend this woman and claim these are real stories. Seriously, what's going on upstairs? But so anyway, let's keep ripping this terrible crap apart. And this is going to be based off of a blog post which will be going live on the 14th of March 2025. So if you guys are watching this before that date, consider this a sneak preview. I can't wait to finally be finished with this garbage book. I'm only reading it so I can write blog posts and make some videos about it. I hate this woman so damn much. And so anyway, well, I'm very glad Almost Lost was savaged, and very rightly so, by reviewers when it came out in 1996. I'm stunned Avon Books greenlighted its publication in the first place. What? What was going on? So many people were derelict in their duty to vet Dr. Fraud's books for quality control and question her claims that these were all true stories. And I have a fairly recent video about how in the world did this crank ever get and keep a publishing contract in the 90s, early 2000s, what was happening in the industry and the pre-internet world that would enable this. And it's really curious. I just only found out about this recently. I don't think I'd ever heard of this prior. She is also credited with a second 1996 book called It's My Candle, a diary with a male journalist, which given all the basically, the corroborating evidence and such, that really seems like another version of this book, or a sequel, or the trial run, or companion volume spin-off, something like that. But that was quickly yanked from the market after this book didn't sell well, or maybe that she decided, oh, I'll do a case study instead of a journal, that'll be fun. Or maybe that was even the original name of this book and it was in diary format first. So that's a really interesting question. I would love to find a copy of that book and answer wow, what was the story with that book? So anyway, continuing the numbering from the prior video. Number 101, total Molly Mormon moment, when Dr. Fraud tells Sammy a teen girl obligingly canceled her appointment so the Pwish's Peter Priesthood could come in unscheduled for a supposedly much more urgent session. Wow, that was really something. In Mormon culture, girls and women are taught to always put themselves last and never say no to males, unless, of course, it's preserving their Pwish's virginity no matter what. Dr. Fraud idiotically spins this as good for her, part of her healing. She was given the pleasure of helping someone else to heal himself. And she even says oh, this was really, really good. She's been through the terrible things Sammy, I wished all my clients could be as intuitive and open and anxious. She really loved serial lists with no commas, to learn and change and heal themselves. If he knew the resistance that the girl who had given up her time had encountered along her way back, he probably would have appreciated her magnanimous gesture 100 times more. This is a total Mormon fantasy, and I really don't think any ethical therapist would do this. Or I understand sometimes doctors have to, emergencies, doctors and hospitals and such. Okay, there's a patient coming in with a very urgent thing, blood, or raging infection, their limb is hanging by a limb or something like that, and I unfortunately have to reschedule you because you're obviously objectively not as urgent as this guy coming in. But for psychotherapy, I'm pretty sure that just doesn't happen. It just seems yet again like she's playing favorites with him throughout the whole book. She even calls him therapist's pet at one point. Well, we know she was not a psychologist in real life, but just it blows my mind she would think that's totally professional and ethical, and anyone would actually do that in reality. Oh, there's someone who has an urgent thing. I knew he tried to off himself at one point and he's been very depressed. Can you be a good little girl? Good Molly Mormon. It's a Peter Priesthood. It's a boy. Put yourself last, sweetie baby. Just let Sammy come in because he's the male. He's superior to you. This is a total stupid ass fantasy. Number 102. Ethical professional therapists maintain professional boundaries by not giving out their home number and saying patients can call at any hour. Wow, that's like creepy. And for like, doctors and nurses too, I mean, of course, if like there's an emergency, like they'll, help with it if they're, in the like the same apartment building or in the neighborhood or whatever, and someone calls to them. But like seriously, like they don't appreciate taking their work home with them. They like to have like professional boundaries between themselves and the clients or patients. They want like a private life. Imagine that. Not okay, like Sammy called me at 6:30 in the morning or 10 o'clock, 10:30 at night and woke me up when I was asleep, but I immediately wanted to do whatever he asked me because, oh, I'm the magnanimous, precious Beatrice, Dr. B. I have to do everything for him. I'm his best friend. I'm at his beck and call 24/7. Wow, this was like totally like effed in the head. Number 103. If Paula, Sammy's mother, is such a good nurse, why would she tightly wrap Sammy's broken ribs or wrap them at all? Wow, that hasn't been done for many, many, many decades. We now know it does far more harm than good, like, for example, restricting breathing, increasing heart rate and blood pressure, and cutting off oxygen, not to mention, like, people who have the wrapped ribs, they can't really move that well. I mean, of course, there are ways to prevent, like, the ribs breaking even further, or, like, just keeping them, like, stable, but you don't need to wrap them to do that. Maybe you can just lie in bed for like pretty much most of the day, except when you like need to go to the bathroom or something like that, or like even eat in bed or something. Just like avoid moving as much as possible so you can keep the ribs stable. But we don't wrap them anymore. That's just not how we treat broken ribs. Like, and if I'm not even a doctor or a nurse or any kind of healthcare professional myself, and I know this, like, what's her excuse? It's really embarrassing how like I've put more research effort into her books than she ever did when like looking for all the many like flaws and like historical inaccuracies and like dates that don't line up and stuff that like never happened that she claims was a real event, like the Garth Brooks concert on a date where he never had a concert in any state in that year. But anyway, moving on. Number 104. People suffering from genuine depression and other serious mental health issues probably aren't the best judges of whether their thinking is distorted. Yeah, imagine that. And what grade to give the statements in her little self-evaluation ditto. Yet again, she knew jack about how the brain works and what depression truly is. And I'm not like 100%, maybe we'll never know, but I'm pretty sure the reason this is one of her only 2 books where she is not the sole copyright owner is because it does have like a couple of like informational like things. Where's the pull up the QuickTime player so I can like see it's getting up on the screen. Yeah, so she has a bunch of these like dittos and like illustrations and such throughout the book, and I'm pretty sure she wasn't the one who made these, so that must be the other like person who owns the copyright. It's just like freaking like stupid. She loved handing out homework to people. I felt discouraged, and I should have. Someone irritated me, and I should have. I felt mad. I felt sad, guilty. My self-esteem was so low. I felt jealous. Someone in authority told me what to do, and oh wow, because we must obey the authorities no matter what. We're good little Molly Mormons and Peter Priesthoods here. This is so freaking like stupid though. So anyway, where are we? Yeah, she knew jack about how the brain works and what depression truly is for her. It just seems like, oh, he's like, angry at the world and upset and like general malaise, like typical teenage angst. This is not reading like, clinical depression at all, or if she's trying to make it seem like it is clinical depression, like why is he getting over it so freaking quickly? Oh wow, you snapped me in the bud, you snapped my depression in the bud, Dr. B. Now I will know to always repress any negativity and angry feelings because I know it's not good to be toxic. I should just dump that whole gagging load of gagging garbage instead of wallowing in it like a pig in slop. Number 105. If only it were that simple to never allow yourself to forget that the way to cue the italics, negate a negative thought or action is to cue the all caps or pet fetish, neutralize it with a bright white light, cue the italics, positive thought or action. Like, wow. And who the hell taught this crank to constantly write in all caps? I mean, if nothing else, that should have been like that number one giveaway to these like editors and agency she had at Avon Books in the later part of her career. Like, wow, all these different characters, why are they all always writing in all caps? Who really does that in real life, and particularly now in the age of the internet? That's the equivalent of screaming. Like, no, that's very hard to read, and it just like looks goofy and childish and stupid, as well as all the other many giveaway trademarks of her writing from supposedly all different diarists. Number 106. The key to good mental health is not positivity. That's an entirely different thing. I mean, of course, I think we should be as positive as we can be, and it's good to have a generally positive attitude instead of being cynical for its own sake or whatever. But that's just always not. It's not always possible to be 100% positive all the time. And in fact, that's actually not really a natural thing. Like in Judaism, we're taught we all have the evil inclination in us, that yetzer hara, but without the evil inclination, we would never do things get married, have children, start a business, build a house, things like that. It's just a matter of how we channel it. For example, we can go overboard and sex addicts and stuff like that, but you need to have sex to have children. And obviously this was way before IVF and stuff like that. But anyway, you can be your evil inclination can tell you, oh, I'm going to cheat in business and do an unethical business and stuff. But if you're channeling your good inclination instead of letting the evil inclination have power over you, you're going to be an ethical, good business person and use the money you make once you've broken even and started making a real profit to help and give back to your community and just other things like that. And if you're married, you're not going to constantly be having sex 24/7. You're going to have some moderation and when you do it. But anyway, getting back, that's not positivity 100% all the time. That's not the key to good mental health. She did not even understand what mental health actually is. And in her mind, it just seems like she's saying oh, a positive outlook. That's completely different from actual mental health, which is in the brain. That is so offensive, insulting, and downright dangerous. Way to blame the victim and push pre-modern ideas about what causes mental health issues. Plus, even if one has perfect mental health, which isn't really realistic, it's not natural to always be 100% happy-clappy. She did not understand life outside of the Morador. Number 107. Positivity might be taught in most cultures and religions, but cite me the chapter and verse in any of these holy books or any other writings from these cultures or religions that point blank says all negative feelings are inherently wrong and should be repressed. I'm drawing a blank on where in the Bible it said that, or in Buddhist or Hindu scriptures or anywhere else. Again, you can't just throw this out. Give us a chapter and verse, Dr. A-hole. Number 108. Dr. Fraud was so projecting her own decades-long unresolved issues with her own dad for leaving the family when Sammy goes on unhinged, babyish rants about Lance, carrying on like he's the most evil, hateful, cruel person who ever existed just because of the divorce and not even wanting to name him. For example, in the beginning, Sammy claps his hands over his ears and la, 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 I don't want to talk about him. I can't. I won't. Or it was the male who fertilized my mom's egg. They called Egbert, and oh, I just want to throw up. Gross. Ew. Nightmare time. I don't want to talk about him. I'm ripping up things he's sending me in the mail. Oh no. Terrible. That loser Lance is trying to stir up the whole hellhole of my past. I don't need that. Every bad thing that's ever happened since creation has come flooding back, overwhelming me, undermining me. He's opened up the Pandora's box that I swore I'd never let be reopened. Sammy sniffed and wiped his nose on the back of his hand. Why doesn't the bastard sadist just leave us alone? He's already dumped us. Started my life on the road to ruination. Oh, it wasn't just him. Oh, how I hate that a-hole's guts. I'll never forgive him for worlds without end. He's beaming up hate at me from hell every minute of every day, and I'm beaming hate down to him in hell. He's just all these rants throughout the entire book. I have a nightmare almost every night about that lunatic degenerate. I want to vomit up all his genes that are in my body and throw them on the highway with the rest of the rotten roadkill. Oh, I guess it has been pretty stupid of me to think I could make something that bad go away by itself, hasn't it? Well, Daddy divorced me. Oh, terrible Daddykins. Oh, Daddy, the worst person who ever lived. Oh, terrible. It's just well, you get the idea. He's just ranting about his dad through every time he mentions Lance throughout the entire book. Number 109. How the hell many teens are that amenable about not just seeing a therapist, but go on to quickly become BFFs and start calling the therapist's house at night or first thing in the morning? What a loser. That's as much a loser move as voluntarily hanging out with parents, which pretty much all of her characters do in all of her other books. Number 110. How many therapists give out freebie sessions? Wow. Let alone as often as Dr. Fraud. I mean, of course I understand, the you're an intern or something like that, or you're just like starting your brand new job and you're like under like regular supervision because you're not really long in your career. You're not even like necessarily licensed, don't have the PhD yet. But like if you're like supposedly a long established therapist, like she's claiming to be, you're way past giving out like freebies like that. Again, she's like playing like pets with Sammy. Oh, smart Sammy, patting you on the head. Solemn Sammy, super Sammy, sweet, neat Sammy, precious, darling Sammy, darling, la la la, Sammykins, my precious Sammy. Oh, you're the therapist's pet. Oh, I love you, babykins. I love you more than any of my other patients. This is like really creepy. A lot of like sexual tension between them. Who knows what she was intending, but if she really did intend it as unwritten sexual tension between like herself pushing 80 at the time and a 15-year-old boy, wow, that's really effed in the head and creepy. She really wanted to portray herself as grand goddess of the universe. Number 111. And how many therapists meet clients outside of the office, wow, and have lunch together in the park during their session and buy food for them too? That kind of renders the whole confidentiality thing useless. Like you're talking about what's supposed to be private information in a public park at peak like hours when lots of people are going to be there, just like walking through, hanging out, having lunch, whatever. And they're just, anyone can like walk by and hear, eavesdrop on your private business. Wow. And don't forget, she tapes this session too. So like she's editing out background noises. There's never any, I know this didn't happen, of course, but like, so if this really had happened, like she would have had to like frequently probably edit out background noises. Oh, I can't hear. These people are blabbing loudly nearby. Like, so again, it's like always an ideal world when they have these like sessions. Everything is too freaking textbook, and I'll get to that in a future video. Any real therapist would be fired for such a shocking, egregious breach of professional conduct. Like you can't even be like friends after the therapy ends. I mean, yeah, if you like run into one another in public, of course, say hello, maybe have a quick, nice, like small talk chat. But she just did not understand professional conduct and boundaries. You're not supposed to actually become friends with the people you're treating. It's the same way as like, you usually don't become best friends with your freaking the doctor, unless, although I do know that sometimes people do end up, like marrying someone who started out as their doctor or nurse, but that's, a whole other thing. So 112. Total inconsistency. When Dr. Fraud finally, this was like the first time in the entire book after 100 pages, so she finally mentions consent for recording during one of the telephone calls. Like she apparently wasn't recording at the beginning, but oh, now I'll press record and tap the phone. Are we supposed to think she asked this prior and chose not to mention it, or that she taped the earlier calls without Sammy's consent? Like so many things in her books are just so totally inconsistent. Number 113. Sammy casually uses the R word, which Dr. Fraud also used in some of her other books. I shamefully admit I myself used that word before I knew any better, and also this was like really many years ago, before we were as sensitive to the issue, or at least knew more about it, like as we do today. And unfortunately, many people, that's still their go-to synonym for like stupid, ignorant, ridiculous, because like why not just insult the mentally, the intellectually disabled? They're just not real people. Like we'll just use an old-fashioned term, outdated, discontinued term for a medical diagnosis to say someone's stupid, because I have so much respect for the mentally disabled. But anyway, moving on. I wasn't claiming to be a psychologist like back when I used that word, and my excuse was I was like young. Number 114. No normal teen wants to go to a therapist first thing in the morning. Like, get a life, Sammy. You're a loser. Number 115. Why would Sammy's gang decide to move to LA from presumably Utah, unless this was a period when Dr. Fraud was pretending to live in California? It's a total myth that gangs frequently migrate to other areas. I mean, like sometimes they do, but it's generally when they're like really like large chapters or branches of like nationwide gangs. There's like a big like war going on in their hood or something like that. But it's not just, a random like high school teen boy gang. Oh, we're just gonna move to LA because one of the guys, Blunt, knows some other people there. Like, yeah, that'll be fun, and we'll just be like totally homeless and living on the streets. And again, if like some of the gang moves to LA with Sammy, then why the big production when he gets home a few months later? Oh, Dr. D, the new principal, he moved all the gang members to an alternative high school, so I conveniently don't have to deal with like getting jumped out or ever looking at those guys ever again. Now they magically no longer live in the city either, apparently. Never has to see them ever again. But anyway, it's like it makes no sense they would just like up and moved to LA, like for no freaking reason, particularly a no-name high school gang called the Harpoon Gang. Then again, she never let facts get in the way of spinning these wild yarns. Number 116. Paula is a good little Molly Mormon who chides Sammy and tells him not to be so cruel to his abusive father just because Daddykins started begging forgiveness out of the blue. Oh, terrible Sammy, you are not allowed to be angry at your abuser. That's just bad. It's like those enraging episodes of Maury where we're expected to believe men who have been extremely controlling and abusive for years are suddenly, like out of the blue, scared straight after a weekend in jail or boot camp, or meeting with a woman who was abused herself and might like sometimes bear scars, like for example like acid on the face her ex threw at her when she like attempted to escape. This is like so makes me so furious. Oh, just go back to an abuser. Don't leave him in the first place. Yeah, I know many Mormon bishops and like regular like lay people in Mormonism also tell women, oh, don't leave your abusive husband, or don't even think about leaving him. You should stay together or go back, because think of the kids, and don't you want to be sealed together for all time and eternity on your own little planet in Kolob? When you go to the celestial kingdom, your family can't be all sealed together if you're divorced, and that's terrible, and you have to be unsealed in the temple, and you can't do the whole pay, lay, ale thing with the baker's cap and the great green fig leaf apron and another proper temple marriage ceremony. If you, a woman, get divorced, the man can get the whole temple ceremony wedding if he remarries, but just think, you're just a woman, like this, you can't get divorced. Oh, terrible. Number 117, enraging how quickly Sammy forgives his dad after everything he did. Like, that's, again, totally setting a dangerous precedent. Oh, I know how badly he abused you, but he says he's sorry now. Like, don't even let him demonstrate over a long time before you consider going like back to live with him or spend any time like alone with him. Just like believe he's totally changed. Like, be the bigger person. Oh. Number 118. Dr. Fraud had no clue what mental illness actually is. If she thought it could so easily be prevented with, cue the all caps, the positive power of positive thinking. And she claimed to be a psychologist. I can't wait to do this. My upcoming video when I talk about all these reasons we know based on everything in her books that she was not a psychologist at all and had never even really studied it at all, maybe like a class or two, but she was not trained in this at all, knew jack squat about it. Number 119. Dr. Fraud has the whole family play a, cue the all caps, toxicity of negativity game, pushing her pseudoscientific theory about negative feelings being inherently selfish and self-abuse, just like, and like they're like pouring stuff out of a glass, or maybe that was like a different game, like the ego game, the distorted thinking, evaluations, all these. Oh, the family is getting together. Oh, and of course the little girls obediently forgive daddy too. Yeah, that can't be dangerous. Like young girls or young children, period, like going back to live in a house with someone who was like terribly like angry and abusive, the distorted thinking evaluation. And the poor 10-year-old sweetie, life is very confusing. Oh, and Lance and I are getting back together now. And oh, I'm Lance. I'm not going to tell the girls about the fact that I used drugs in the past. I'm going to dump that whole gagging load of gagging garbage. I just don't want to wallow in it. And she's like, oh, here it is. Like, I'd like for you to introduce us to the toxicity of negativity. Oh, it's a series of fancy words for simple, humble, little truisms that control our lives. You get the prize for daring to say something about the show-offishness of the title. Maybe we should find a new one. Yeah, that sounds like something Mormons would find entertaining. So everyone looked embarrassed for a moment, then began saying negative things and tossing the papers down. She wants the floor to look really like messy, because that's what you do when in your brain when you're thinking negatively. It's all cluttered and messy. I think school is stupid. Traffic tie-ups, like, is that a Utah expression? I've never heard that anywhere else. Make me want to lash out at people. Yeah, who doesn't feel road rage at that? Standing in line drives me crazy. The world is full of rude, crude dorks. The word dork, like, seriously? My boss gives me a pain in the neck. More people would say butt or ass. I despise doing dishes. I detest cleaning my room. My algebra teachers sometimes make my head almost explode. Most teenagers are stupid jerks. I'm a stupid jerk. I can't do anything right. Nobody likes me. I don't like myself. Let's take a few seconds to contemplate how saying negative things makes us look messy like the floor. Sammy, I think saying or even thinking negative things makes us feel bad too. Physically or mentally, both, right? And then she Goes on about how, oh, the ancient Greek, Roman, Chinese, Indian, and other Eastern civilizations all knew the body and mind work as one. But this has nothing to do with her whole like toxic positivity theory of repressing any kind of negative feelings or trauma or depression and forcing herself to unnaturally like smile and keep sweet. And she goes on about the stupid ego aid game. Just the whole book sucks. Number 120. I want to smack Dr. Fraud for telling Sammy's little sisters they should never be angry or hate someone for any reason. Oh, the Mormon conditioning starts early. You can, like, a girl can never be too young when you tell her, put yourself last, sweetie. Boys and men come first. Like, don't say no for any reason. Just smile and keep sweet all the time. Why would you want to be like angry or feel trauma or sadness or depression when you can just repress it all and have some toxic positivity and just la 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 be a good happy Molly Mormon who like never stops smiling? And maybe you'll need a little bit of Prozac later on, because like there's a huge rate, I think it's the highest in the whole America, where the highest rate of like Prozac and antidepressants and mental health drugs in Utah, precisely because of this whole culture of like compelling, like forcing Mormon women and girls to always be unnaturally happy. So this book, it really enrages me, the whole like, oh, just like repress your depression. Like depression isn't really that serious if you can just smile and keep sweet all the time. I'm going to have so much fun ripping this book apart in the few more videos coming up, at least one more about everything wrong with it, plus the whole like, detailed synopsis and review. And I'll also be using a lot of this for an upcoming video about like everything she did not understand about psychology, and a couple of other upcoming Beatrice Sparks videos as well. So thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you very soon. Bye.